Hey there, OCD family community. Can I just say how nice it feels to be sharing a full length episode with you that's all about this past weekend's 28th International OCD Conference recap? The conference was so great, and my handsome hubs joined me too. So it was a kid free trip full of adulting, learning, being with colleagues, and with you, fam. It was my pleasure and honor to meet listeners and to just grow the extended OCD family community. So, whether you were there or just catching highlights from afar, I wanted to take the time this episode to do a conference recap, including all the crap we experienced on our way home. And you know how we do it, fam. This is our community. So, I wanted to make sure that I can bring the support and the resources that we learned about back to you. So let's get to it. I'm Nicole Morris, licensed marriage and family therapist and mental health correspondent. And let me be the first to say, welcome to the family, the OCD family, that is. I am here to create a community of support for family members, spouses, partners, parents, adult children, as there may be adult words, and chosen family of OCD sufferers and their community. I've had over 22 years of experience in the mental health field, but please note that this information does not qualify or substitute as a diagnostic evaluation, therapy, or treatment, and it is presented on an as-is basis. Please follow up with a qualified mental health provider in your area regarding concerns for yourself or loved ones. Thank you for joining us today. Now, let's get started. Well, welcome back to the OCD Family Podcast, and I am welcoming back Patrick, my handsome hubs.
Hello.
Hey, hello. So, Patrick attended the 28th International OCD Foundation Conference with me this past weekend, and it was fun because it was kid-free. First of all, it was fun because it was great anyway. But also, we moved here from California, so the conference was in San Francisco, and we missed that city, both of
Yeah.
us. When we were there, we're like, oh, we love
I have a
it.
lot of fond memories as a kid going there.
Yeah, and I have fond memories of being there, running half marathons there. I've been there with Patrick, I've been there without Patrick. It's a great city, it's expensive, has so much good celiac-friendly food.
Mm,
We ate
it's
well,
true.
so that was fun. But why don't we talk about it? What were your main reasons for attending?
Well, I wanted to support you and the podcast, of course. Plus, you were speaking, and I wanted to watch you speak. That was a lot of fun. And then also, just as a parent of at least one child who has OCD,
At least time is young for the others.
it's
Let's see.
I knew that there would be some things that I could ask, which was exciting, and I was able to, so that was good. And just some of the topics in general were interesting anyway. I actually thought I might get bored, to be honest, some of the days, but I never really did. It was a great conference.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted him to go too because Jack has OCD. Also, his mother, who was on a couple different episodes at the end of last season, suffers from OCD and emetophobia as well. We
Hmm.
have it on my side of the family. I have wrestled with him in terms of, does he have OCD or does his anxiety go by another name? And so I
Hmm.
just thought it would be useful. And it is different hearing it from others and hearing it in sessions and hearing people talk about it a bit more objectively. It's probably different hearing it than it is from me in terms of how it applies directly to ourselves, to our relationships. He has a wife with OCD, as I've been
Hmm.
clear about.
It's I think one of the things that I was taken by is just how smart you are, because as I was listening to a lot
Ooh.
of these sessions, I'm like, yep, I've already heard that on the podcast. My wife talked about that extensively. Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah, I know what ego dystonic is. Oh yeah, I know this, I know that. Like just all these different things, and I could tell that I was much more equipped than your average person,
Average Joe. Yeah.
average Joe,
Well, and
non-professional in
thanks.
OCD.
So you're saying it gave me some street cred. You were like, "Hey,
Oh yeah.
this stuff checks. It reads."
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I like some good street cred for myself. And I think we can relate. Like, it's when our spouse, when our loved ones, when they speak into us different concerns, issues, feedback, sometimes we hear it and it's muddied through the lens of us just having already that personal relationship. So sometimes just discussing things with somebody that does not have stake in your family or opinion one way or another about you, but is just talking more generally about things that can be helpful. We'll get to this in a little bit in terms of lessons learned, but I think one of those moments was around medication when you were able to go to a session and ask a question about medication. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I was glad that you were able to talk to somebody that wasn't me, saying what I know from research in terms of the benefits or concerns, risks, etc. for medication, particularly when we think about medicating children. So, I think that was good, but yeah, we went to San Francisco. Fun fact, I got a call the week before, a woman that grew up with my husband and his family and best friends with his best friends and, all very good friends, called me to ask some questions going, "Hey, I think I'm running into some OCD and to consult with me on some cases." Happened to live about an hour outside of the city. And so she attended, and that was really fun too because it was like total reunion for Patrick and her. I've met her a couple times. This is undoubtedly the most amount of time I've spent with her in one trip, but it was so fun.
It really was. It was
Yeah.
really fun seeing her again.
Yeah. So if you're listening, friend, hey, friend, we'll be talking about some fun moments that she helped sponsor later in the podcast. Also, if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, actually, I don't know if I put this on Twitter, Threads now, I got to get this up on Threads. But we had quite the debacle coming home. We had some drama. I got kicked off a plane. It's a whole story. And so we're going to talk about that too, because it was an eventful
Yeah, it
return.
was something.
It was something. So, in terms of the objective for
And I'm
today,
gonna name names too, by
yeah,
the
I
way.
bet you are. You're gonna name names. I'm
Uh-huh.
showing the receipts, people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. If you want a little bit of tea, we're gonna have a tea refreshment later. But first, because this is the OCD family community, I want to talk about some of the more pertinent pieces to OCD that we ran into. So, first of all, we attended some of the sessions together, but I really encouraged Patrick to look over the course of sessions and if any of them stuck out to him, to really go and pursue listening and hearing and learning from those other sessions. And so he did that on a number of sessions.
Mhm.
And so I just wanted to first of all think about what were some of your favorite moments from the conference in terms of sessions, anything that you may have gleaned that was like, huh, that's a new way of thinking about it, or something that's thought provoking. I know that you and our friend at the first or second day were like, hey, let's get together. I want to debrief about these sessions, which was really great. So, what were some of the top moments for you from the conference this year?
Well, let's see. I really enjoyed a bunch of these sessions. First of all, I thought your session was really good. I really did. I'm not just saying that.
Thank
It
you.
was
I
a
didn't even
good
pay him to say
it
that.
was a good discussion and it was facilitated really well. You and Jeremy did a great job with that. I thought the showing was good. A lot of people came, and that was really good to see. And it was just a good discussion overall about neurodiversity,
CD.
OCD, and that was very interesting. And I was really impressed with the way everybody sort of
Engaged.
engaged.
They,
Yeah,
they were very
I was
engaged.
surprised. Honestly, I was surprised. But you know how it is in conferences, like, you'll say everybody sits in the back row, like 100 people sit in the back row, nobody sits in the first 10 rows. You ask them questions and they all just stare at you. That's what I
Hmm.
thought it would be, but instead everybody was sitting close and almost every single person said something.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was pretty ridiculous, like, that's just not what I'm used to.
Yeah. Well, and what I will say is for folks that didn't go to the conference, or even if you did, and there were a lot of really interesting talks and groups and activities that were running concurrently. So
Mhm.
I know for myself, there were certain time slots where it's like, how can I split myself in multiple pieces? Because I wish I could have gone to all of these things. But what I will say is I co-ran a group with Dr. Jeremy Schumann, who was on the podcast. We did a 3-part series on autism last spring. And what we did was we had a support group. So this was like after hours session. They have different tracks for families, for everyone, for parents, for kids, for therapists, for researchers. And the conference runs most of the day and your brain is pretty full. And so we were the first evening group, and it was a support group for OCD as a form of neurodivergence. So considering OCD as neurodivergence. And it was a very lively discussion. There was a lot of really great involvement. I saw multiple people from our group throughout the rest of the conference that would come up, had lunch, and it became like, hey, we're like a little club. It was great. And what I will say about that group, if any of y'all are listening, still feel free to email me or Jeremy and we can get you connected. Jeremy is working with great focus on how to improve liberation-oriented treatment, which I feel proud of because that was like a baby of our autism talk that we came up with some language around that. But also he is working on just having more neurodiversity affirming treatment and more talks that talk about neurodivergent processing and affirming strategies for therapy. And so it was very, very good. He was inspired to really get the ball rolling on helping improve neurodivergent affirming therapies. And people were like, yes, how can I get involved? So that was really, really cool. And we did have really good attendance and really good engagement. So that was really fun. And I met some fabulous people in there. I met a fellow podcaster in there who we are going to be in talks so that he can come on the show and I can return that favor. And so that's going to be really great. But yeah, it was a very fascinating, really rich discussion. And I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to co-lead that. So I'm glad that we could touch base with that. And I didn't say he had to say my session, so thanks, babe. In addition to my session, any sessions or talks that kind of stick out for you where you were like, that was good. I learned something or that was really entertaining. What do you think?
Yeah. The Birds and the Bees and OCD was a really good one.
Yeah.
Allegra Castins, Kyle King were in that one, and I believe one other person, I think it was either Samantha or Genevieve, but that was really good, and to be honest, it was quite entertaining. Sex and OCD is a subject that creates a lot of funny discussions, and they did not hold back, so that was a lot of fun. There's a lot of like automatic built-in sense of shame around it with OCD in some
Around
cases.
sex,
Yeah,
you mean?
around sex.
Taboo.
Yeah, and like they did a really good job just being very willing to just chip away at that very quickly.
And Kyle King,
And
what I will say is Kyle King usually does a roundtable for IOCDF roundtable once a month on YouTube with Dr. Jonathan Abramowitz. And so he's going to continue to be an up and coming advocate and do great things, I'm sure, for the OCD field. And
Mhm.
Allegra also is fairly well known, a social media influencer,
Oh
personality,
yeah, you can tell.
just
Yeah,
she's fantastic.
yeah.
And she's such a fierce advocate as well. And she does not shy away from talking about things that typically people feel a lot of stigma and taboo around. And so she's done really great advocacy work. And so I've heard from multiple people
Yeah.
that was a good session. And I'm gonna be reaching out and seeing if we can create some of that magic here. But it
Oh,
sounds like
absolutely. Allegra, if you're listening, you gotta come on. You're
like
great.
she is great, and
Yeah.
she's done a lot of great work for this field.
Yeah, and then another one that was helpful to me was the Q&A about medications for OCD. That one had Dr. Stephen Poskar, Christopher Pittenger, Sanjaya Saxena, I think. Sorry if I'm butchering the name. Carolyn Rodriguez and Jamie Fusner. Sorry if I'm sorry if I'm butchering names. I could tell they were very important people, so they were very trustworthy, but also they had a lot of experience. So it was good being able to ask some deep questions with them. I actually got up and asked a question at that one about the developing brains of little kids and these sorts of drugs, and they were very reassuring. First of all, treating OCD with medication or something like ADHD with medication in a little kid, the science behind the particular drugs that are common in that have been proven over the course of many, many decades. And they're not, this is not like a new field with these classes of drugs and these drugs in particular. So that was reassuring, but also they weren't just like medicate your kids. They were also very pro making sure that whatever you do, if you do it, make sure you're working with a psychiatrist, make sure that you are getting other treatment for OCD and not just medicating it too. So, but it was nice to know that I didn't need to worry about the development of my children's brains for that matter. That was
Yeah.
one thing that concerned me. Did it totally alleviate my concerns? I mean, I would prefer to not have my kids on medication. I will say I still prefer that. That being said, just in general, right? That being said, if they need it, if it helps them, like they gave an example when I asked it, like the medication can help them. For example, in the case of ADHD, it's quite possible that their development could be stunted without the medication.
That's
Because if you don't have the medication, you may have trouble learning in school and focusing and
mhm.
making connections with other people, other kids their age. So, and I agree with that. And the question is, do they need it? And they don't have to be on it forever either. It's a thing that constantly gets reevaluated. So anyway, it was nice hearing from like the ultra experts on that one. Another
Wait, tell what most of the questions were about.
Oh yeah. Like I'm not even kidding. Like probably 60% or 70% of all the questions for this panel on medications for OCD was, when can I get psilocybin? When can I get MDMA? When can I get all these different psychedelics? It was really like, please, 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 I want psychedelics now. I
Yeah.
saw the Netflix special, it was very much like that. They even
Uh,
brought up the Netflix special
yeah.
because seriously, like everybody wants
Well
psychedelics, like everybody.
well,
It's like the 1960s all over again.
psilocybin, for people that are unfamiliar, are mushrooms, and there are some experimental trials going on, not
Very limited
very
ones.
limited because it's illegal. Uh,
Well, I mean, they can do it. They just have to get
well, there
approval to
has to
do it.
yes, no, there has to be, and they're
Yeah.
not only happening in the States. I know one of the guests I had on from the UK was in a psilocybin
Yeah, they
trial.
mentioned Europe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so those are mushrooms. MDMA, for people that don't know, is it speed or
I think it's
ecstasy?
ecstasy.
I don't
I
know, I'm
don't
not
quote me though.
yeah,
I don't know.
I
I'm
don't
not an expert
all
in
I know
drugs.
about MDMA is from the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. I don't know if that's something
Oh,
I should admit or not, but that's my experience. Is MDMA the same thing as Molly? I think that's
it might
ecstasy.
be.
Okay,
Molly and ecstasy, I think, are the same.
yeah. Anyway, so we're talking, what is the effects? Could there be a regulated form of pharmaceutical therapy or psychopharmaceutical therapy? And tell about the woman.
Oh yeah, there was a woman who got up, and I don't even think she would care if we said this because
She was very,
she's very vocal.
very
She
transparent.
got up and she said, "I'm in my 60s, and there is no way in hell I will ever do ERP. So when can I get psilocybin?" Was basically her question.
Yeah. Which ERP, for
Eh,
anybody new
eh,
listening, is exposure and response prevention therapy. So exposing yourself to the things that are triggering your obsessional thoughts
Yeah.
and
I mean, I
resisting
appreciated her honesty.
compulsion. She's like, "I'm not doing that
Yeah.
shit. When can I have the shrooms?"
Never. Yeah,
Yeah, so
exactly.
that was pretty entertaining.
I went to one hoarding disorder.
Mhm.
That one had, let's see.
It reminds me of when we watched an episode of Hoarding. I don't like the show Hoarders, by the
No,
way.
no, I don't either.
But Patrick's like, "Let's check out an episode." We watched, like, the most depressing episode
Oh,
of Hoarders, and I was like
it was so
he
depressing
was
that
like, "Usually
afterwards
it's not as hard as this." I'm like, "It's always
I
hard."
turned to Nicole and I was like, "Why are we watching this? It is depressing as hell."
I'm like, "Welcome to Hoarders." It's a deep-seated thing. It's not just an
Tragic.
entertainment show.
Yeah, no, it was sad. It was
Yeah.
genuinely sad. Well, anyway, I went to this hoarding one and They don't like the show either, obviously.
Yeah.
That show at least came up once. But it was a
What?
very interesting talk as
Mhm.
well.
Was,
Yeah, I got up and asked, like, what can family members do? Because they were talking very clinically. So one of the things I noticed was this is a conference full of professionals, right? But it also had some people who were just desperate for answers.
well, and
And
they have
so
different tracks. You can attend, like, a
yeah,
therapist track,
I
but it is
understand.
gonna be a lot more clinical.
But everybody goes to everything, I
Yeah.
think. So anyway, I noticed that they were getting a lot of clinical questions from therapists who were trying to come up with treatment plans and stuff. And I just got up and said, "Hey, I'd love to know, like, for family members." I don't even know if they were prepared to take a question like this, but they actually answered it really well. So maybe they were.
They were.
But I essentially said, what about family members who they don't even have family members yet who would even admit the problem and they might be in total denial, and how do you actually go and as a family member talk to them and help them get to that place? Because everything in that discussion up to that point was about how people who already admit that they have the problem can
Mhm.
go find treatment and how to become a therapist who can treat it. And I got a round of applause for that question because apparently a lot of people wanted to know that
Well,
answer.
I'm not surprised because
Yeah.
if you caught so last season, I did an OCD related disorder series, and I had, the president of OCD Midwest, Gabriella Fagella, on, and she talked about how 0% of her hoarding clients, 0% came in saying, "I have a hoarding issue." The
Right.
insight is very low
Right.
around hoarding.
Yeah.
It's usually, "I'm feeling anxiety and stress," and we find out through the back door that maybe
Hmm.
there's some hoarding behaviors, if not, even a bigger problem like hoarding disorder happening.
Yep.
And so, actually, it's very, very common. I guarantee they were prepared for that because
Yeah, it was
very
good.
few people are coming in going like, it would be the outlier, not the norm, to come in and be like, "Hey, I have a trouble with hoarding." They don't see it as a trouble with hoarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, just to be clear, it wasn't a round of applause, it was a smattering of claps, just I'm not
It was
saying
a round of
I'm
applause.
not saying it was like
There were
100
all the
people
tweets.
clapped.
Did y'all check out
So if
Patrick
anybody who
Morris over here? I
uh,
just have to side note, hoarders and people around hoarders and children of hoarders, they have big feelings. And I think we talked about this before, but I don't think it made the episode about my first like negative slash hate tweet that I received from
mhm,
for the podcast was you're gonna like you can't please everybody, right? And so you're not always gonna get positive feedback, and I do try to take in whatever feedback I get, but I remember how I had my hoarding episode and I got I think it was a tweet about like not today, Nicole Morris.
or no, not today, family
Oh,
podcast.
it said
That made it even funnier.
you, OCD Family Podcast, we won't be belittled by your writing off of abuse. And I
And
was like, whoa.
and look here. I know from your perspective, hey, you welcome the kind of comment like that. You're
Yeah.
definitely not shaming them.
No,
It's it like that's fine.
I'm
You can
not.
go have your feelings. That's
I told
okay.
Patrick, I've arrived. I've
Um
gotten a hate tweet. And he was like, what?
yeah.
We've read it. And we had a moment of reflection.
Yeah.
It was something.
I also thought two other panels were quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The misophonia panel, which was jam packed. They had
Mm.
booked a tiny little room for it. They probably didn't realize how much interest there was in it. Misophonia had so much interest. It was packed to the gills. It was
I
insane.
I don't know. I think they know there's interest and they knew there weren't answers and they were like, we're gonna limit that shit. I could be
Maybe.
wrong,
The panel basically didn't have any answers.
right?
I was with the friend that we mentioned on that one who was very interested in that.
Hmm. Well, they
And
struggle with misophonia as
their
well,
answer
so
to almost every question was, it's early days, we don't know yet, but we're working on it. And that's it. I
and
mean, that
that's
was
true.
really that was the entire session in
That's
a
true.
nutshell. And I don't think they would disagree with what I'm saying.
So
But
for anybody listening going, "What is misophonia?" And you may have I feel like there was, like, a trend on Facebook, I'm old, so Facebook, maybe on TikTok or whatever other places, starting to inform, but, like, when you get very dysregulated and agitated or frustrated at certain sounds that can really trigger almost this kind of primitive reaction sometimes in folks.
Anger and aggression.
Yes, and often it
It's
can
not the same. There is a difference between, like, synesthesia, where you have, like, where you may hear a sound and it gives you a funny feeling. This isn't even that, or you hear a sound and you see a color. This isn't that. It's not just simply a sensory disorder where you're just irritated by the
no, it's a
sounds.
neurological
This is
wiring.
like you get mad. Like, you hear
Yeah,
the sound and you get, like, really angry,
enraged, it
and it's
sometimes
only particular sounds that cause it.
it's very distressing to people,
Right.
and so there has been a little bit more information coming out about this in more recent years through social media, not always accurate, sometimes more accurate and sometimes less, so you have to take social media with a grain of salt, but there has been more awareness around this, and so what I will say is I get calls, at my office even where people say, "Please, please, like, you treat OCD, can you do this?" And misophonia has somewhat been attributed within OCD and OCD-related disorder category. But the problem is they're doing shit ton of research on it, and there just really isn't
Yeah.
reliable, viable data saying this is
Yet.
gonna help. Yet, yeah,
The
yeah,
thing that was hard about that was, like, there was one woman in there who
is desperate for
was desperate
answers.
for answers. She's a mother who, I think she said that she got into the profession of being a therapist just so that she could help her kids more, because her
Right.
kids had been struggling, especially with misophonia.
Yeah.
And she was, I mean, I think she broke down. She was very, at the microphone, she was very upset.
Yeah.
And they couldn't really offer her any hardcore answers yet. I mean,
And it's
they were like, "You're a super mom," and all that. And I know that they want to offer her answers, but they just didn't have them yet, which is
yeah,
unfortunate.
I
So,
think you and our friend reported, like, the power of a mother's love, and I can't tell you how many people in the PANS and PANDAS community, so that is when OCD symptoms and, these diagnoses trigger from an autoimmune response or an infection where we have OCD then suddenly show up overnight, and it's like your child or your loved one has been completely transformed by it. I mean, there are a number of people I met that have gotten into the field through trying to have this fierce advocacy for their loved ones and then ended up like trying to also help others with the knowledge they were gaining, etc. And so I think that it is really hard. Misophonia at best, from my working understanding, I'm by no means an expert in misophonia, but I think at best right now doing CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is not going to eliminate it, but for some coping strategies, when you do feel that influx of rage or
mhm,
distress, this is the best thing they have to offer, and that's not a solution. That's literally like Band-Aid symptom management. It's better than nothing, but it's not touching the problem.
right.
But they are working on it a lot. Eric Storch, Dr. Eric Storch, who was on the podcast talking about our research roundup last season, and he was
You should
all
get him on to do a misophonia update.
I was going to do a misophonia episode with him last season potentially, and we ran out of time. But what I will say, and I may, but what I will say is I know that he's continuing to work hard on
Oh, yeah.
any solutions.
That was clear.
Liability wise, they can't. And even if, within cancer, all sorts of different areas, if you have some clinical trials that go on that are promising, you can't go out and verbalize that because they have to replicate those trials, make sure that the outcomes are significant and related to this thing that they're saying will help. Otherwise, if they were to go out and say this, all these people desperate for answers for misophonia would run out and do this thing that may not help at all.
Mhm.
And so they have a ethical responsibility before they say this can work to prove that it can work. And so even when a trial or a study turns out well, if, could that have been a fluke? Could that have been luck? We want better than luck for your loved ones and for sufferers. And so they have to replicate it. They have to make sure that the variable they're saying is gonna make a difference actually makes a difference. So, it is hard because when you see that kind of suffering, you feel it rips your heart out to go like, I would do anything, and if I was told there's absolutely no answer, I'm going to the international conference and there's no answer, that feels hopeless, but what I will say is they're continuing to hack away about it, and why it was so full is because it's a problem, and
Yep.
they're continuing to work on that. Alright.
And then the last one I'll talk about is there was an ICBT one that was also packed, similar
Mhm.
to the misophonia one. The entire conference is very much behind the ERP approach, and so there was a lot of resources on that. The
Mhm.
ICBT one was really good, and the discussion was good, and I could tell there was a lot of interest for that. It's definitely newer in the American market in terms of a market, but the American like side of things. It's a newer approach to a lot, even though it's been around for a very long time, apparently, but it's also gaining some steam as of late. And it seemed like there was a lot of interest in it. And I
Yeah.
thought some of the answers that the panelists gave were just fantastic. One guy in particular asked a great question about what's if patients already know that they're crazy, then what is the point in ICBT where you're helping them understand the folly in
Reasoning.
their reasoning?
Yeah.
It's like they come in, they know, they already know. And that I thought that was such a good question because it was such a boiled down question, but with such big consequences in terms of how they may or may not answer it. And they answered it with flying colors. They absolutely explained it, not in a way that I can repeat because I'm not as smart as those people, but it was very good. And at the time, I thought, yes, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that a lot of people there got a lot out of that. By the way, the lady in her 60s who said, "There's no way in hell I'm ever going to do ERP," actually asked a question in that group as well. And she's like, "I want to know more," because, of course, she doesn't want to do ERP. So
Right.
maybe here is an approach for her, right?
That's
So,
not illegal mushrooms.
yes,
Imagine.
exactly. She's like, "I still want the mushrooms, but"
She didn't say that.
no, but
But
she probably
he
was
was like,
thinking it.
but I got a feel for her in the other one. She's still going for the
Mhm.
mushroom. No, what's funny is I wanna explain, first of all, ICBT stands for Inference-Based Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. It has about 30 some odd years of research behind it, multiple, I wanna say 80, 90 studies, randomized controlled trials, peer reviews, independent labs that are looking, not a lot of labs, but there are independent labs that are looking at these different studies. These are all things we wanna see when we're talking about evidence-based practice. And there was an ethics session that a lot of the professional field, I feel, attended where they did credit this, yes, that there were some independent labs that were doing that and that it is an evidence-based practice. But there's been, I guess, void is what I will say in terms of information, at least in the US, about this until now. I think there's really a lot of growing momentum. So last season, around episode 20 or 21, I think, maybe it is 20 and 21, I interviewed Mike Hetty, who was on the panel. He was talking and explaining ICBT to me as a treatment for OCD. And I have to admit, I had heard whisperings of ICBT before that. It all sounded nuts to me. It sounded like glorified rumination. But I've been in this field 20 some odd years before I started treating OCD. And so I wasn't married to ERP being the only way. And honestly, if you're in any other field of mental health, there are multiple evidence based practices that say there's more than one way to look at this issue. And so it was odd to me coming into OCD that really it was ERP. We can sprinkle in some ACT, which is
But
acceptance.
if I may say, and the panel was very clear on this, I don't think ICBT poses any threats to
No, I
ERP.
don't
In
either.
fact,
Yeah,
they were very good.
clear.
They were
Mhm.
very clear that they think that ERP is a gold standard that can stick around. Like there's no issue there. Like I think that the evidence is overwhelming that ERP works, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, and that based on, I am a layman, admittedly, but based on everything I have listened to here at this podcast and seen, ERP seems like that should absolutely be embraced. But it's just nice to have other options too
Right.
for the people that might say, "There's no way in hell I'll ever do
Or
ARP."
even if they would do ERP, what would be a better way to address this? This is kind of like if someone was
Mhm,
gonna say, I'm gonna go on a diet. There's not only one diet. It's not only reduce your calories and diet and exercise.
mhm,
It's not only keto. It's not only paleo. It's not only whole 30. It's not only whatever you could do. It's
yeah.
not medication. It's not only whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, and here's coming into OCD, so I felt this fierce protective need to be mindful of doing the right kind of therapy for an OCD client because what we learn is other forms of therapy, while well intentioned in their own ways, I want to believe well intentioned in other ways, can actually make OCD worse. So, psychodynamic talk therapy, EMDR, though great for trauma, for OCD, not
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 recommended.
not recommended. Absolutely for trauma. EMDR people might get a little bit huffy about that, but it is not indicated for OCD. And if anything, what we learn is some of the strategies that you might pick up in EMDR can become pretty high level compulsions. It's how it's functioning for the treatment. So I think people come at this well intentioned and protective because you got people out there going brain spotting for one, which is just, if you're a brain spotter, I don't know, take issue with me if you want. It's not an evidence based practice for OCD. It's not helping OCD. I'm not saying that you can't think outside the box on different things, but this is I feel angry actually when people sway folks that need help into an avenue that is literally pouring gasoline on the fire. And so I think a lot of OCD specialists then are protective because even CBT, which ERP is a part of, as is CBT can be harmful if not utilized in the right way for OCD. Things like
Mhm,
thought stopping techniques. Well, that's avoidance. Avoidance is a form of a compulsion.
mhm.
Sometimes reframing and mental reviewing and doing some of these different things where we're like actually just ruminating more and more on it, going into therapy and talking more and more about underlying implications and meaning that really is just, again, fanning the flame of the compulsions. Let's talk about it more. In fact, I'll pay you. I'll come in. I'll see you weekly to compulse. And so I think that a lot of OCD specialists come from a place of wanting to protect, but ICBT is not that same deal there, just fanning the flame. In fact, it actually proposes a mechanism for change and a mechanism for what's driving OCD and inferential confusion. It's a very dense model. If you are interested in learning more, I have a water cooler chat about ICBT. It's one of my treatments that quench along with ERP and medication. I also have a number of ICBT episodes that I started with that Mike Hattie episode through the rest of season one. And I pretty much talk about ICBT and ERP at least a little bit in every episode. So I don't see it as a threat. I see it as a treatment that quenches, something that can be hydrating,
Well, it's evidence-based.
and it's evidence based.
I mean, that was, talked about.
Some of the ERP camp would say it's not empirically supported treatment, which is a status coined by the APA here, but it is an evidence-based treatment, and
Gotcha.
it is shy of a meta-analysis, and it's in process of working towards that for APA. So it is a treatment that quenches, but there's been a void of information about that. So it was interesting that woman, that 6-year-old woman was also like, yeah, like, I don't give a damn who hears IOCDF should be providing more information. It was quite a saucy little chat, but I will say the panel, some of the best top-notch experts in our field handled it beautifully, gave really good explanations. And if you're new to OCD or new to the podcast, when Patrick says if they're already crazy, he's not saying that we're sitting there looking and pointing at clients and saying they're crazy, but people with OCD sometimes will tell you, I know this doesn't make sense. I know it's not
Right,
true,
yeah.
but I can't
Thank you
stop
for
thinking.
clarifying
I
that.
can't stop
Yes.
feeling that way. And so it wasn't that the man was like, they know they're crazy. But ICBT is talking about
Yeah.
reasoning errors, and so he was basically saying if they already know they're having a reasoning error, but they can't stop, what's the point
Yeah,
of going, "But you're
I
having
think
a
the way it
reasoning
was
error?"
said was that the ideas he's been told by his own clients that they know that some of their ideas are crazy, not that they are crazy.
Right.
Yeah,
They're just saying, "I
yeah,
know it's not true, but I can't stop my brain from braining."
right.
And so what's the point of going, "Oh, did you realize your brain's not braining correctly?"
Yep,
And they handled it very well in saying, "Yeah, that's not the point."
right.
In ICBT, the point is realizing why this was so convincing because we're using logic, but we're using it in these obsessional inferences of doubt where we are literally talking about irrelevant possibilities rather than what's going on with the here and now evidence. So that was an excellent presentation as well. It was really well attended. There were people sitting in the aisles, there were people crowded at the doors, every seat was filled, and it was an
They were
exciting
laying down on the floor.
it was an
It was everywhere. They
yeah,
were
it
everywhere.
was an exciting time to
Yeah.
see some hope really, I think that bubbled up for people, and I talked with some clinicians that were like, "Hey, I thought this was bullshit before, but I'm sold." And so that was exciting. I think we'll see
Yeah.
more.
It's always interesting to see. Speaking of exposures, should we talk about your exposure this trip?
With the car.
Uh-huh. Let's talk about it.
Yes. Okay,
So
so this is a non-conference moment, but fun
mhm.
in San Francisco. So our friend that we met up with, well, first of all, let's talk about Waymo first, because this is where this all the stuff started coming
I'm a
together.
programmer, I'm techie. Long story short, I told Nicole, "Oh, we're going to San Francisco. I hear that there are Waymo cars driving around with no drivers. I wanna ride in one."
Mhm.
And, of course, I told my sister-in-law this, and she looked at me like, "What, are you nuts?" But that's the look she gave me. She didn't say it, but yeah, no, I do. I wanna try it. Turned out you have to be on a waiting list. Womp womp. So I
And
signed
they
up as soon as I got there. I didn't know that. You have to be in the city to even sign up. So I signed up when I got there, and then it was like, "Waiting list." Oh, great. Okay. So I guess I'm not
of
gonna
like
ride one.
400 people in front of him.
Well,
And
who knows how
these
many,
cars
but
only run in a certain part of the city from 9:30 on. I learned this from Christina Orlova. If you're listening, Christina, hey, her fiance has he's on like
the Waymo list.
he's in the Waymo
Club.
club.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so Patrick was bummed because he wants a robot car to drive him around.
Yeah, I wanna live in the
Bummer.
future. Yeah, so anyway,
Yeah.
and then I was bummed, but then our friend who was with us said, "Oh, I have a Tesla," and we were like, "You do?"
Yeah, she
We didn't
we
expect
didn't
that.
know she had a
No,
Tesla.
we
She
didn't
was full of
know.
surprises.
Yeah.
And so she was like, "Yeah, my husband thinks that's interesting, but he'll just put our Tesla in self-driving mode." And Patrick was like, "What?"
Yeah,
Well, so I said to her, I'm like, "Any chance you could bring that? And I would like pay you if you let Patrick drive it." Which of course they like grew up together. And she's like, "Please, he's my brother. I have a different mother. Of course he can
aw, that's so
take it out."
sweet.
But she was so generous. She came, she paid for in and out privileges out of our hotel.
Oh, so expensive. Yeah.
Very expensive in San Francisco, let him drive it multiple times. So
Mhm.
Patrick and let the car drive Patrick multiple times.
Yeah, I got in the car, I put it in self-driving. Man, that was so cool. That was my favorite time of the whole trip.
I rode in the
I'd
back.
never even been in a
I had
Tesla.
never been in a Tesla, could not figure out how to
It was
open the door.
so cool.
I was like, "What?" The whole talk
Yeah.
about a sunroof. The whole roof was like glass.
Yeah.
And
Teslas are awesome.
and so
But, I
yes,
mean, I okay, I'm not a car person at all. I am not a
except
car person at all,
robot cars.
but
He's really into the
I'm
robots,
really
self-driving.
into artificial intelligence, and the idea that a car can drive you is
The
just
electronic
so
car,
amazing.
it's a battery that
Yeah, so
yeah.
I was excited, and the self-driving did not disappoint. It was making lane changes, it was getting aggressive when it needed to, and being
With, like,
safe.
asshole drivers,
Yeah, like,
yeah.
it would be like an asshole back to them. The only thing it didn't have was a flip off, thing where it flips
But
people off,
our
but
friend
it
did
could
say
have.
you could program the horn to be
Yeah.
anything you wanted, so I
It
guess
was
you could
pretty It was
Give the old big old finger to
yeah,
somebody at
it
the
was
horn.
pretty amazing. I really want a Tesla now.
Yeah, so just for
Ruh-roh.
context, my OCD likes to get loud when I'm in the car.
Yeah, here comes the exposure.
I feel very anxious when I feel like not in control. And
Mhm.
even if I feel in control of the vehicle, I can't control what all the other
So
folks are
imagine how
doing.
she must feel if she's in the back seat while not only is she being driven by somebody else, but she's being driven by the car.
And the car is like speeding up to get
I'm
around
like
somebody.
I'm sitting in the driver's seat, but the wheel's turning on its
The
own. That thing
car
is driving and speeding up and slowing
at
down. And
one
Nicole
point,
is like holding on for dear
oh,
life.
I did better than that. Old me would have held on for dear life. Instead, I sat back
Yeah.
there and I said,
Yeah.
I'm doing exceptionally well for
Oh yeah.
this.
You
And I
didn't
was.
scream. You never screamed.
I wasn't gripping on for dear life
You
either.
in the past you would have screamed
Of
at least
course.
once or twice
I'm not shy about that.
or grabbed
But
me
I
and been
did
like,
feel a
hit
need
the
for
brake.
some validation, not necessarily like constant
Yeah.
reassurance, but I'm like, somebody needs to note how well I'm
Can
doing.
can I just say, by the way, our friend was saying that she gets nervous too, and so only her husband
With the
with
self-driving
the
feature.
self-driving. She told me only her husband uses it. Well, I felt like it was less this is gonna sound crazy, but it felt like less stress to me
That's crazy.
because
Just
I
kidding.
was in a city that I didn't know very well. Once it was in autopilot, I actually didn't have to pay attention to where we were going. All I had to do was monitor that the car was not being unsafe. Does that make sense? So, like,
Yeah.
essentially, like, I didn't actually have to worry about all the other external things, like what turn are we going to make? What lane do I need to be in? Like, the car managed all of that. Are we going the wrong way on a one-way street in a town I don't know? Are we going up a hill? When is that a stop sign or a light? I can't see. It's too high. It's the steep
Yeah,
hill.
because the elevations in
The
San
car did
Francisco, you get
all of
some
that.
crazy
The car did
elevations.
all of that. I'm not
Yeah.
used to San Francisco, so all I had to do was make sure that the car was being sane, and it was.
Yeah, and
So it was actually very low stress
what I
for
will
me.
say is if you've never been in a Tesla or tried the self-driving function in a Tesla, it does require you to keep your
Hand on the
hands
wheel. Yeah, it
on
wants
the
to
wheel
feel the resistance of your
because it
hand.
wants to know
Yeah.
if, like, there is some kind of air factor. And what I will say in a city like San Francisco, where there's a bunch of lines on the street that aren't just road lines, but trolley lines and all sorts of shit, it did get confused a couple times.
Yeah, it did, but
And so it
from
wants
some
your hands on
very
the wheel
obvious things that
because you can
is confusing.
immediately retake control of the car
Oh, yeah.
by
Your
grabbing
hand
the
is should
yeah,
already be on the wheel.
right.
Literally, all I have to do is
And
turn,
if
and then
you
it's
take your hand off the wheel, it will
yeah.
actually like come out of it will initiate driver mode again because it'll be
Yeah,
like,
it'll
"No, you need to be the supervisor on duty."
and it won't let you use the autopilot again until you turn off the car completely and restart it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so, like, if you don't follow the rules, it's like not
It's
even
like consequences, bitch.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's a
so
smart car.
it is a smart
It's like
car.
an artificially intelligent car. It's
Yeah,
very cool.
so it was surreal.
Very fun.
Then my friend was like, "We gotta take this on the freeway so you can at least feel some
Oh,
of
that was
its
fun
power."
too.
And because of where the hotel and where we went to dinner somewhat nearby, it was very close to where the 101 goes over. I'm like such a SoCal person. The 101 people up there would be like, "Ugh, you don't
Mhm.
say the." And anyway, this
Well,
is
it's
a
the
whole
East
SoCal.
Coasters that don't
This is
talk like
SoCal,
this.
NoCal though. But NoCal would
The
be like, that's hella
405 to the
wrong. We
101.
just say 101. But anyway, he gets on and it immediately starts taking us over one of the bridges that connects San Francisco. There's multiple bridges. Golden Gate being one of the more
This
famous
is the
ones,
other big bridge.
but this is
It's not the
this
Golden
wasn't
Gate,
the
it's
Golden
the
Gate.
other one. Oakland Bridge, I think.
But
Yeah.
he starts driving on it and we're like, "Oh crap, we're not supposed to be on the bridge." And so there is like a service station where like utility workers or whatever,
Yep, and I did a
go in.
U-turn there, and I went to hit it
You hang
because I had
on.
to get no, I'm
You can
telling the
but
story.
you can
We
U-turn in there, but it's literally imagine like a 6 or 7 lane highway where there's not even an on-ramp. It's like, I'm gonna left turn onto a freeway
Yeah, with no on-ramp at
with
all.
no on-ramp. So in a regular, like, gas power engined car, that would be, like, scary if it's busy, and it was really oddly busy at that
Yeah,
time of
although
night.
I waited for a good gap. I mean, it wasn't like there were cars within feet.
He
Anyway,
did.
I punched it, and I'm not a car guy. I never speed, I never
We
do
were
anything.
warned that the punch goes quickly in a
Yeah, so
Tesla,
I
too.
punched it on the Tesla, and it was like a roller
It
coaster.
was
It was
like, have you
insane.
ever ridden Superman at Magic Mountain?
It was faster.
It was
It was
like,
faster than that.
I felt
It
G-force.
was.
Yes, he went from literally, like, 0 to 70 in a second.
I mean, maybe not quite that fast, but it was pretty fast.
And it was
It was
like, and
very,
you
very
felt your
fast.
body go,
Yeah.
right, like,
Yeah,
into the seat, and
yeah.
I was
That's
like,
so fun.
I am
I want one.
and again, I was like, "I just wanna say I am doing extremely well back here." Like, not my idea of fun.
Yeah, so you had your ERP
Yes,
experience.
yes, I didn't
You did not
cramp
have your response.
did
You did not. You had the exposure, and you prevented the
I
response.
did, but I
Yes.
did want credit. I was like, "Somebody take a Polaroid. This is a moment I deserve praise because I did that.
Yep,
It was a hard exposure. Give me some praise."
yep.
But yes, Teslas are really cool. And then it was funny because we Ubered to the airport at the end of our trip, and our Uber driver happened to drive a Tesla. And now I've learned how to get into the Tesla. Like,
Yeah.
I am like a regular, like, oh yeah, I'm riding Teslas all the time
I have a
because I could
confession.
not figure out how to open the
I
door
I have a
efficiently.
confession.
What?
I spent $5 more to order a Tesla in particular.
You did?
I did. I didn't tell you that. I wanted to leave San Francisco on a high note, so I actually bought the Tesla version of our
You
Uber.
did?
I didn't tell you. It was only
Why didn't
$5.
you tell
I don't
me? You
know.
goober.
I was like, "Oh, look, it's a Tesla."
What's funny? It gave you an option of,
It
"Do you want
does.
this?"
Well,
Was
I
it an
chose
Uber X?
no, it wasn't it was, like, only $5 more, and it was a
Gosh,
it
Patrick.
was it was the electric comfort version,
This person here,
and I
Patrick
was like
Morris, he was like, "What are the odds of Tesla? Apparently pretty good since you ordered one.
yeah. Well,
Thanks for that."
I ordered an electric luxury car is what I ordered, and
Uh-huh.
I'm like, "Well,
You're
what
like,
will it
"I
be
didn't
besides a
know what he'll
Tesla?"
get."
Of course it'll be a Tesla. I was so
Electric.
happy.
Oh my gosh. Then the guy, he's driving us, and I'm like, funny enough, as he must have thought, "You guys ordered this. What are you talking about?" I'm like, "How random. It happens to be a Tesla. It's a Tesla weekend."
I know.
Well,
I couldn't help it.
then
I
I
knew it was gonna
said,
be the last time I got into Tesla for a long
I
time,
am
and it's $5.
listen, I am a very, like, I love to socialize with the Uber drivers. We build bridges when I'm in an
Yeah,
Uber
that's
ride,
true.
right? Okay.
Mhm,
You were pretty chatty with our Uber drivers in Dallas, I will say,
mhm.
and I wasn't like, "Hey, join in." He
Speaking
was
of which
yeah, but we'll get there in just a second. But what I will say is, I told the Uber driver on the way to the airport, I said, "You know, what's funny is my husband just we just were in a Tesla, a friend has one, and he was driving it. This car accelerates crazy fast." I felt like the driver was, like, chatting with us a little bit. The driver said, like, nothing.
he just smiled.
But Patrick could see him because Patrick was, like, on
I
the
could
other
see him in
side
the
of the back
mirror.
seat, and he was like, "Yeah, it does." Kinda
Yeah,
like,
he had the look,
"Yeah,
the
I
look.
know, this is good shit."
Mhm.
But I was like but he didn't comment at all, and I'm like, "I mean, it gets crazy fast, like, I felt G-forces," and he was, like, silent, and I was like, "I guess we're not gonna talk about the car." New subject. Okay. So we went to the airport. We had one connection. First of all, I was feeling bougie and fun because I can write off this trip. But also, I don't love being in the car for extended hours. And I feel like we put in our time being cheap ass when it comes to travel. I still love a good deal.
Yeah.
But we would travel 2, 3 hours just to get a flight that was $100 less. And I'm like, you know what? And I don't, and we do it even though I don't love being in the car, but I was like, "We are gonna fly out of our town, our little airport."
And I need to prepare the audience for this. You will all be appalled by what we're about to say.
Well, you're
You
building
will.
great expectations.
This is ridiculous.
So
This is a ridiculous story.
it is
And I know
ridiculous.
that because I've told several people this story and they're all appalled
They're
every time
like,
I tell
"This
them.
is ridiculous."
Yeah.
Yes. So we had one connection. We flew out of our little airport. We had one connection in Dallas on the way to San
The flight
Francisco,
to Dallas was great. No problems.
right? And then
Yep.
we had a flight back, San Francisco to
And
Dallas
like I
connect.
said, I'm going to name names. This is American Airlines for those of you who may wonder. Hi, American Airlines.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all listening.
Yeah, I'm
They're
sure
like,
they
"What
are.
do we do? OCD Family Podcast conference recap." What? We're on there too?
Uh-huh.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But also,
This is only the first of a many million bites that I'm going to take out of them
oh
with
my
this.
gosh. Okay. Not that we hold a grudge or anything.
No, but they
Yes.
owe us.
Okay.
They really owe.
So here's the deal. We fly from San Francisco to Dallas. And there a storm at that time? I don't know. There was there was a plane at our gate
Yeah.
and we're delayed on taxiing in, and we had a very short layover.
Mhm.
So we are waiting to taxi in, and they close those doors and will not reopen them for any reason at like
Yep.
10
FAA regulations.
10 minutes before the flight takes off.
Yep.
So we are in crunch time. Long
We
story
made it.
short, we had to rush from deplaning our one plane to the next
To a whole
plane.
other terminal, and we made it. We made it actually with a little time.
And Patrick was not thrilled because he wanted to use the facilities. He wanted to grab a snack, and there wasn't time.
There wasn't any time. We just had to walk
we
on
had
the
to.
plane.
We literally got over there, and our group was already boarding, and all of the
Yep.
things. Right. So first, what sets up the flavor of this experience is
I'm just mildly annoyed at this point.
we are getting on the
Yep.
plane with the same carry-on luggage that we've traveled with the
For
entire
the 3
trip.
legs prior.
3 legs. Who's counting? He is. 3 legs prior. And a gentleman at the gate who's supervising things. In fact, he was the supervisor on duty.
Yeah, we know this. We know it now.
We know it now. Stops Patrick and tells him that he needs to check his bag.
Or he said, "Can you put it in that little measuring thing?" Because he thought it looked too fat. So I put it in. And by the way, it did fit in the measuring thing.
I mean, it
did.
fit ladies like jumping into a pair of jeans, if you know, which
Yeah, no, it did, but it
fit.
did. It technically
you
did.
may have
And
to
I
lay
told-
down
and I
and
told
shimmy
them-
into it.
And they were like, "Up, you have to check it." And I said, "Well, I rode this plane before with this bag, this exact bag with the same stuff in it." And they said, "Yeah, but this is a smaller plane."
They're like,
and I
"Nope."
said, "No, this is the same plane I took from our home city. Like I did." And they were like, "It will break our overhead bin. You have to check it." And then they said, "Unless you can zip up that," you know how some of them have those extenders?
Some of those luggage bags.
Yeah, they're like, "Unless you can zip up that extender, you have to check it." So I was like, ugh. So I zipped up the extender and I'm like, there.
He like manhandled that bag like, "Ew," and it, like went because he was annoyed.
I was annoyed. I wasn't like,
it wasn't.
I wasn't
mild, it wa-
horrifically
No,
annoyed.
you weren't. But you were like, okay, like,
There it is.
And
It
I
zipped
was,
up.
and I was like,
Yeah.
yo, Tone, don't just.
I was annoyed.
Chill. And
I
he was
was
like,
annoyed.
what? And so anyway, that's our
Yeah.
walk
So
onto the plane.
we board the plane and we call our kids and
First, we get on the plane, and Patrick's like, well, I didn't get a snack. I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm like, you go to the bathroom.
Oh,
I
yeah.
got to go to the bathroom,
Okay.
too.
I go to the bathroom in the back of the plane, and by the way, it's a
The
porta
porta
potty. I call it a porta potty because in this case, it was the dirtiest bathroom,
was
plane bathroom I've ever been on.
So gross.
It was really
sticky.
gross. My feet were like,
Ugh.
it was so gross.
That gave me chills just thinking about it. It was
It
pretty
was
nasty.
so gross.
Like-
and so then I go like very quick, I'm a dude. I went very fast. And then I came out
Explain.
and I sat down, and then Nicole's like,
I'm going to go to the bathroom.
yeah, she
So
needs to go.
I go back there, but I am like hyper responsible about making sure I'm not breaking rules because literally the plane
Oh,
is
the
like
irony.
the plane is locking up, and all that. And so there is a woman, a flight attendant in the back of the plane. And I looked at her and I said, I'm so sorry. We just landed and had to run to the Skylink and run over here and we were boarding. I just really have to go to the bathroom. Is it okay? I step in here. And she was like, ma'am, you don't need to explain it to me. Like, I get it. It
We've all
happens.
been there.
We've been there. You do you. Go in there. Okay.
Mini, mini, moo.
Mini, mini, moo.
Yeah.
That's the inside joke. But anyway, so then I go in there and it's sticky. And Patrick had warned me it was sticky. Ugh. I go in and not only is it sticky, like it's just
It's
disgusting.
gross, yeah.
I look at, like, the sink basin area, and though a smaller plane, these bathrooms are much bigger than the bigger planes' small bathrooms.
Sometimes.
I know because the ones with, like, the changing table, if you've ever traveled with an infant, you're like, "What is this bull crap? This isn't a changing table." But anyway,
Yeah, it folds out like
s
origami.
yes, and you're like, "There's no room for me, though."
Yeah, I know.
So anyway, I am in there and it's gross, and they are, like, still throwing what I would say throwing luggage in the
Into the plane
undercarriage
underneath the bathroom. Yeah.
because it feels like have you ever been in, like, an elementary school and the poor schmuck that has, like, the office that is literally like a piece of board? It's like nothing more. I'm like, I feel like this bathroom is made of this crap board, and I can hear all the luggage getting thrown in the back. And at one point,
And
I
okay,
I
she gets
hear
in there
hang
and like a second goes by
I
and
hear a ding, and I hear it's, the fasten seatbelt, the sign is on, and then I hear this like, and I'm like, "What is that sound?" And then I thought like, "Is it coming from" I can't tell where it's coming from. I'm in the little cardboard porta potty. And so I'm like, "Ugh," and so I'm just like, "I'm gonna get out of here." Then I hear frantic knocking. I'm like, "Yo, I've been in there, like, not even 30 seconds." I'm like, "I am going to the bathroom. I will be out in a moment. I'm washing my hands at this time." I get out. I'm like, "That was disgusting." I walk up to Patrick and I'm like, "That was, like, literally" not being facetious, "that was, like,
the
literally the
grossest
grossest
airplane bathroom
airplane
ever.
bathroom I've
Yeah,
been in."
it
He's like,
was.
"Right?" So I sit down and we decide to call our kids because they're gonna be in bed by the time we land in our home airport because of the time change and travel, etcetera. And we had promised we call them every day and all of that. And so I call
You said that like
well, it's not a bad thing, but it's really
it was
probably
a
the calm
really
before the
annoying
storm.
time when we had to call,
So
but
we call, and for whatever reason, because certain planes, they turn on the Wi-Fi, and then you can't really connect well, and, like, the video kept getting stuck, and my son, my oldest, was asking, like, the same question 90 times over and couldn't hear our response, and this was annoying. And so I was like, "Just hang up, we'll call my sister who's watching the kids, we'll talk to them that way and just be like, 'Sorry, I love you, but when you wake up in the morning, we'll be there.'" This is what we keep saying to them. So, it's past that time where they're like, "Please turn all your electronic devices to airplane mode," and we were on the phone. And so Patrick gives me one of his earbuds, we're talking on there, so, like, we're not disturbing other passengers, we're both
buckle
leaning
up, audience.
in,
This is where it gets
and
crazy.
when I feel that that feeling of someone's, like, hovering over you, standing very close to you, that you're not expecting someone to be hovering or standing close to you, I start to get that feeling, and I look up, and it's the same gentleman that was like, "Squeeze your fat ass back into this
Yes, the
thing,"
same guy.
who
Yeah,
didn't have the loveliest tone with us either. Not that one tone makes it right for another tone, but still.
right.
And he's standing there,
And he leans down
and
to
I
talk to you.
and I, like I'm, like, on the phone with my kids still actively, but I look up and I'm, like, giving him, like, a, "What? What?" Like, "What's going on?" And he looks at me and he was like, "Ma'am, were you smoking in the airplane lavatory?" And I was like, "No." And I, like, because 'cause I'm on the phone, and I thought he was coming to yell at us for being on the phone, but he wasn't, and I was like,
Right, I did
"That's"
too.
and I'm thinking, "That's a dumb
It's the only
question. Of
thing that
course
made
I did not
sense.
smoking in there." And then I look over and he's still standing there, and then I look up and I'm like, "Yes," because 'cause
And
I'm not processing this as quickly as he is taking in his thought process.
right.
Because again, I'm in the middle of a conversation with my kids and we're repeating, and I'm like, "Gosh, can we just get going? It's been a long travel day." And so I look up at him and he goes, "Were you vaping in the airplane lavatory?" And I was like, "No." I don't vape, I don't smoke. And he was like, vaping is smoking. I'm like, yes, I'm aware. I don't smoke. I don't even own a vape or anything to vape or smoke with.
Yep.
And then he was
And
like,
then he just kind of was like, "Meh," and walked off,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
walked
kind of had this
away.
little like bitch
And then
pivot.
and then Nicole and I looked at each other
I'm
like,
like,
"What?
what in the heck?
What is going on?"
To which
Like,
passengers
it was
nearby.
I spoke to this woman who was sitting next to us, and she looked at us with these bewildered eyes and was like, "I can tell you guys don't smoke. I used to smoke. You don't
She's like,
smoke."
I smoked for 30 years and I was at a hotel the other night and I was on the first floor and I had the window open and I could tell someone on the third floor on the opposite side of the hotel was smoking on their balcony because that's what a smoker can do. And I was like, okay. And meanwhile, my kids are still on the phone.
Yeah, we're, like, talking
And
to our
so and
kids.
so I was like, thanks. And so then I turn back, then I get this hovering feeling again. And I look up, it's our friend from
Same guy.
same guy, and and I looked up and I was like, "Yes?" And not in a rude way, but, like, in a distracted, like, I'm divided in multiple directions, "What do you need?" kind of way. And I
Right.
look up and I'm like, "Yes?" And
He's like, "Ma'am, unfortunately, the pilot has ordered you off the
he's
plane."
like, "You're going to need to collect your personal belongings now and deplane. The pilot and the flight attendants are ordering you being removed from this plane." And I was like, "What?" Like, I literally, like, I'm not processing it
Yeah, I mean,
on
honestly,
all
it was so
cylinders still.
bewildering. It was such a bewildering
So, I'm not
experience.
saying it in, like, trying to be a jackass way, but I'm kinda, like, completely shocked because I'm just trying to finish this flippin' phone call with my
Right.
kids, and it's been multiple interruptions. It was a fast run over here, then it was the disgusting bathroom. I'm like, "That's insulting, please." So then I said, "Are you serious?" And he's like, "I am completely serious." And
And then you said
I
to
said
him, "But on what legal grounds?"
I'm like, "Well, on what legal grounds am I being taken off this aircraft?" And he's like, "For smoking in an airplane lavatory." And I was like, "I didn't smoke. Search me." And then
And
people
this is an
around.
audience, this is the thing that bothered me the most. This is the thing that bothered me the most. There was no, and I mean no attempt by anyone on that plane to even barely verify their claim. They
Not
just
even barely.
they could have
Didn't
actually
smell.
investigated the thing, they would have seen that we didn't. They could have smelled us, they could have I would have strip searched for them. I offered right then and
I'll
there.
take a strip search from you.
I offered right then and there. I'm like, "Search us." I said, "Search us. We have never smoked a day in our lives." And you know what? All the people around us were
They
totally on
were
our
they
side.
didn't smoke, and
They
I would
even
have
said
smelled
that.
the smoke. She was barely gone in the bathroom. There's no time she
Yeah,
would have
like the whole
touched
it
the
felt
smoke.
nice because all the passengers were totally
Yes, it
sticking up for
restored
us.
her faith in humanity,
But
and then he was like, "Do not get involved," and it was just, like, escalating,
listen,
right?
I just wanna say, like, the only thing that makes it appalling to me is not that they have to kick a person off for smoking. Obviously, they do, and mistakes can even happen. But when there is absolutely no attempt, 0 attempt
To verify
to
it.
verify 1 ounce of the evidence, they just said it and ordered it. That is absurd.
So then
Absurd. An
I
American, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I stand up and I
It's
was like,
ridiculous.
and to explain further, the people removing us don't even work for American. They work for Dallas Fort Worth Airport.
Apparently, the guy who was the supervisor of the gate works for the airport, yeah. But I don't
And
blame him.
yes, he had to do his protocol.
Right.
But
I'm
so then
angry with the
I'm
crew of
I'm
that
like
flight.
standing up and I see the woman because remember like hyper responsible me who was like, "Is it okay if I use the bathroom?" She's like, "Don't explain, just go. It's cool. We're good." I'm like, "You know that I was barely in there. What in the world?" So I look back at her, not in like a combative way, but I look back at her and I said, "What?" Like, and she was mouthing very big, like, very you can tell exactly what she's saying. "I'm so sorry, like, I can't believe this is happening to you," kinda thing.
Right.
And so I'm like, "You know I wasn't smoking back there," and she's like, "I'm so sorry," and I was like, "Oh my gosh." And the people around us that aren't supposed to be getting involved are like, "This is not right." I
Yeah,
was like,
I
"Thanks, people."
it was nice though that they didn't automatically, like Reddit style, just assume we're horrible people. They
Right.
actually, like, the people around us believed us because,
Yes.
first of all,
Have the
any
smell of
evidence.
someone
We
who
didn't have any
would
evidence.
obviously have the
0.
smell if they just went and lit up. Even if you're vaping, you would have had a scent. There
Something.
was no smell of that. There
Absolutely.
was no trace of that in the
Also
bathroom.
also, how do you even get a vape through security anyway? I just wanna know. But anyway, let's assume that
I'm
somebody
sure
could.
you can travel with a vape, but
Oh, alright, fair
I mean,
enough.
if
I
someone
guess that's
vapes, you're
true.
just not allowed to
You're
charge it
just
or
not allowed to
use
use
it
it.
or
Alright,
whatever.
fair enough.
So then I'm like getting off, and I said again, and Patrick's a little bit ahead of me at this point, and I turned to this male flight attendant who's at the front, like servicing the front, and it's a smallish plane, so it's not like a lot of people, right? And I look at him and I was like, "I'm sorry, what legal grounds is this on?" And he looks at me and he said, "It wasn't my call. It was their call. I'm so sorry." And so I look over at the dude who's like, "It's their call and that's it." Right? And I was like, "Dude, he's saying that it was your call. Why is this your call?" Cuz now I'm like, I know that legally they can't do this. But he had a little pissy moment with my husband getting on there about the bag and then
Yeah,
can I
like,
get
is
it
this
down?
vindictive
And
or
so I'm
something?
like, I know that wouldn't be legally okay and he can get in trouble. So of course he's not going to say that. But I'm like thinking, I'm not saying
You
at that
did
point.
ask, "Is
I
this
did
about the
later. I
bag?"
did later, but not at that point. I'm thinking like, are we looking for a reason because you didn't like us kind of thing? Like, I don't know. And so I'm just trying to process it. And I'm like, they're saying it was your call. And he's like, that is not correct. And this is not a discussion. You need to move now. And so I had said that loud enough, though, that my husband had heard it, who had already started to deplane because he's like 2, 3 steps in front of me. And so he turns around and he was like, they're saying it's your call.
Well, what I overheard was that it wasn't the pilot's, and so what I did was I was only, like, a foot outside the plane. I turned back around and stepped back into the plane, and I said, "Wait a minute, is it the airport doing this? Did you guys kick us off?" I said it towards the pilots, but not in, like, a really
And he
aggressive
was like, "I wanna
way.
talk to the pilots." Well, this flight attendant dude, like, straight up, like, blocks the door to the
Oh, yeah,
cockpit
he
because
blocks me
it's
like I'm gonna
open.
get violent or something, and I'm like, "No, if anybody
Patrick,
has ever met me,
he's not a
I
violent.
am not." Yeah,
Yeah.
no, come on,
Yeah.
people.
So
And then the guy was
s
like, "Sir, I'm gonna have to ask you to get off the plane." And so I got
yeah.
off the plane.
So we're
At this
going.
point, I'm very, very
Patrick
upset.
is super pissed.
Oh
He's
my
using
gosh.
some cursey words. He walks out there, he picks up his bag, he puts on a search me, starts taking pictures of the guy that kicked us off the plane. I'm like,
I was trying to get a picture of his badge so I could get his name.
what?
I didn't care about the
But,
picture of him,
but,
but it made him uncomfortable, so I deleted the pictures.
so he's like, this is unacceptable and I am not feel comfortable with the way you're escalating, whatever. And I'm like, I am also not comfortable with the escalation happening here. I want you to go take a seat, please. I look, the gate directly across from us now has 2 armed police officers, not TSA, not whatever, 2 armed police officers.
That was
They
not
had a
me.
big overreaction.
I was pissed. Well, the thing that made me mad about it was the fact that, again, it's not even that a mistake was made, and it's not even the inconvenience of having to stay at a hotel that night, although that was annoying. They did pay for it, of course, but because the manager came out and she was like, "I can tell you didn't smoke." So, I mean, we were vindicated on the spot. The problem that I had with all of that was the fact that it was a moment of injustice, so to speak, and the fact that, we're perp walked down the plane by like, escorted off like we're some kind of criminal when we've
Although
done nothing wrong.
although what I will say that was not in their advantage was the customers, the other, like, people on the flight were like, "This is wrong."
Right.
So nobody agreed with them. They were all like,
Well, at
"What?"
least in the part of the plane we were in. I have no idea if the front people thought we
The
were
front
crazy.
people were not that far from us, though. I mean, it was a
Yeah,
small plane.
that's true.
So anyway, we get off and I'm like, you go get a snack. And because you had wanted to get something and we didn't have time, get a drink, whatever. There were some vending machines nearby and I had asked the gentleman, I said, "Look, is this about the bag? I know that you can't say that it was because it would be outrageous, but, like, why is this why? What is the point?" And he was insulted. So was his little, like, airport friend that was standing there helping with the gate check and stuff. And he was like, "I am insulted that you would jump to that conclusion." And I'm like, "Well, insulted party of two, because I too have been on the receiving end of a false conclusion.
Right.
We are still in real time
Right.
acting that out, and I'm not meaning to be, but I literally, you've got to try to think about it from my point of view. The flight attendants are saying that this was your call, and he's like, "Well, that is a straight up lie. It was their call." And I go, "Well, sir, I'm a mother, and I don't know if you have children, but I can tell you when my children say she did it, he did it, she did it, he did it, she did it, somebody did it,
Yeah.
and it wasn't me."
Yeah.
So it gets frustrating if
Yeah.
you can appreciate that. And he was like, "Well, they were lying to you then because they didn't want to have to deal with it." And so I said to him, I said, "I would like to please speak with the super." I was very cool, calm, and collected through this. I
Well, you
said,
were mad too,
I
but
was mad.
when we got out there, you were more calm than I was for sure. You were calm at somehow. I don't know how. I wasn't calm at first. I was very
So
mad.
so I said to him, I said, "I would like to speak with your supervisor." He said, "I am the supervisor." And I said, "Okay, congratulations on that." Well, I didn't say it in like a sarcastic way. I was like, "Good, good. I
Yeah.
mean, that's cool for you.
Sure.
Can I speak with your manager?" And he's like, "I'm gonna have to page her." And I'm like, "I've got time." So we
We'll wait.
wait, and the manager comes, and the manager apologizes that we go through this because obviously we don't smoke. She also used to be a smoker, and I'm learning as used to be smokers or smokers of any kind have good noses for
Yeah, I
other
mean, we offered
smokers.
to open up every bag, do a cavity search, whatever.
I
And
was not prone to have a cavity search by
she
these folks.
said, "It's totally not necessary. I know you guys didn't smoke because I used to smoke and I can tell you didn't smoke."
We don't do I could smell it a mile away. I'm
Yeah.
like, "So we have heard
So
from
once
ex-smokers."
again, yeah,
So the airport gave us vouchers for hotel, for a cab ride to the hotel, for some food,
ride back.
cab ride back. They booked us on a flight the next morning, and that was it. They encouraged us because they have to write the incident report for their client's complaint, their client being American Airlines, which is now hashtag we're at American Air, not American Airlines, I guess. Now on social media, learn that.
Mm.
And so we go do our walk of shame out of baggage claim to the cab area, and we go to our crappy airport motel. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. It was a airport hotel. And as we're over there, I'm feeling very defeated about how much I just wanted to be home and I'm done with this. And then as we go to get out of the car, I realize, oh, I don't have my laptop bag, which my
Mhm.
laptop is locked down pretty securely because I use it for electronic health records and whatnot. You can't crack into it easily. There are factory resets. If we weren't able to get it back, we could wipe it,
Yeah.
whatever. But
Find My showed it over a field, and so I thought it's on the
right.
plane.
So then Patrick, so we go back to the airport.
Mhm.
I talk with American Airline customer service who happens to be friends and have the cell phone number of our friend, the supervisor over at the gate we were at. And I was like, "Oh, you guys are friends. Well, he will remember who I am. If
Just
you
say
could
the smoking lady.
if you can check, if he would be willing to check. We left on good terms. Apologies were made.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, yeah, I actually apologized to that guy because, he was uncomfortable with the pictures, and I told him I was just trying to get his
and
name,
you have to consent to have your
and I
photo
was like, "You know
taken.
what? You're right. I wasn't trying to I even though I did say, like, 'I'm gonna take your picture,'
And I'm gonna sue you."
it was not because I was trying to intimidate him, it was because I was trying to get his name,
He
honestly.
was he's also a verbal processor, so he was
Yeah.
thinking out loud about all the things, and it was a shocking event.
I mean, my mind was blown that it was happening. I couldn't believe it. And every single employee at the airport that I mentioned this to, which were a
They
few,
were
they were like,
aghast.
"What?
They were like,
I've
"That
worked
is
here for
awful."
15 years. I've never
They're
heard of
like, even
this."
someone who was vaping on the plane
Yeah, I mean, it was
doesn't.
just like it was
Yeah,
just an unbelievable freak
it was
situation.
it was. So, essentially, she gets in contact because 'cause they're buddies. I'm like, "You're gonna have a drink about us, I'm sure." But what I will say, and she calls, "Hey, I have this really nice woman who thinks she maybe left her laptop up there,"
A
but
really nice woman.
by the
He's
time
like, "Ugh."
I'm in tears at this point. I'm in tears because I'm exhausted. I just wanna go home. I'm
And her
not
computer's
feeling
missing.
great. My computer's now gone. I'm like,
We were
"This has
gonna
gone from
record
bad to
this.
worse." We were gonna record the recap. I'm like,
We
"At
were gonna
least we can get
record
work done." I'm like,
at the
"Shoot,
hotel,
we're having a
but because her computer was gone,
Yeah.
we couldn't do it.
So
Mhm.
she comes back, and Patrick sends me a screenshot of my computer somewhere over Dallas because somebody on that
A field
plane,
in Irving, Texas.
speaking of not following the rules, didn't switch their phone over into airplane mode. So that's the last known position before they reached cruising altitude that it
Yeah.
localized my MacBook.
Yeah,
And
pretty
so
much.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So she comes back and she's like, "I'm sorry. It's not there. I think it is probably on the airplane. You should call AA and blah, blah, blah." And she's like,
Yeah.
"But can I just say, I'm angry for you. Because why did they think you were smoking? Why were you removed from this aircraft?" And I was like, So we
Part of me hopes
go,
that that alarm went off.
I kind of hope to, not for like any kind of public humiliation. I want them to know in their heart of hearts that they made a mistake.
Yeah.
But here's what I said
Well, we'll never
to
know.
Patrick,
They probably don't give a shit.
and this was the teachable moment for me. Because he's like, what's the worst thing about this is the insinuation that, and without any evidence and no willingness to even review evidence. And I was like, you know what? This is a good empathy and privilege check then for us, because people get accused of stuff
Mhm.
with no evidence. They're profiled on something, and that's not fair, and it feels shitty. And
Yes.
at the end of the day, the airport gave us a room and gave us a cab and gave us some meal vouchers. Like, this happens on a much bigger scale
Yeah.
with much more
Well,
serious
the things they gave
consequences.
us are a Band-Aid, but yes, I get
They're
what
a
you're saying.
Band-Aid, but it's like it's also like an inconvenience and annoyance, and now it's a story. But some people aren't so lucky when they get falsely accused of things. So
Oh, yeah,
it
no, it
was a
was
it,
definitely
it was
a
a
good
good privilege check,
Yeah, you're, like, in the shoes of somebody else, and you got to experience
and those
something.
shoes didn't feel good.
They did
So I
not,
am
and I
sorry to people that have been
yeah.
falsely accused
Oh, yeah. I
for
have a lot
much
of
less
I have a
or
lot of
much
direct
more.
empathy for that.
Yeah.
I will say, I am not done with America, and I am definitely going to demand
Follow up.
I will now I mean, I'm going to let them know in very nice tones, don't worry, but I'm gonna let them know that, like, I will never fly with them again. I will pay double to fly on another airline unless they make it right. They gotta do something. They gotta give us something, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's first class, maybe it's
You're like,
round
"I will
trip.
never fly again unless my seat folds into a bed." And
No,
like,
they have work
then
to do.
maybe I'll
They have a
forgive
lot of
you.
work to do. Like,
I
that was
mean,
pretty
I'm not
insane.
gonna hold a forever grudge because
No.
not all of American is bad. What happened there wasn't great. Here is the icing on the cake, though, folks. The next morning, we're booked on the first flight out to our home airport. The only people that fly to our home airport from Dallas is American, so we had like no choice but to fly with them. And we land. We had like an 9 o'clock
From
flight
Dallas,
from
yes. From
Dallas.
Dallas, that was our only
We
choice, yeah.
land, and as we're exiting the jetway, guess who we bump into?
Who's walking
Guess who
into
it
the
is?
plane as we're walking out of the plane.
It's last night's crew that kicked us off the
And we're
airplane.
wearing the same clothes.
We are the same kind of look,
And I'm
the same
sure we
kind of
looked
feel.
pleased.
Well,
Yeah.
Patrick didn't notice them at first because I was like, "Hey, did you spot our friends?" But I
Uh-huh.
noticed them, and I wasn't cruel, but I made direct eye contact, like, "Meet my gaze. I'm here to recognize that I know that you know who I am." Not in a vindictive way, but in a let that marinate, folks. Let's just reflect on the moment. Let's reflect on the choices and the effect of the choices that were made. Because I was just sitting there like,
I'm so glad you got that moment
I mean,
because
it didn't
that's a
make it
little.
it wasn't justice, but it at
No,
least
but
I got to look
you
in the
got a
face of my
little you got
accusers.
a little nugget. You got, like, this little nugget of looking into
I
the
got
face
to
of your
look at the face of
accusers.
my accusers.
So
I
much information was sent through that
Right.
gaze.
I didn't glare.
They got the
I
download.
wasn't passive aggressive, but I did, like, look at them like, "This is the result of your choices," kind
Right.
of thing. Not in
Yeah.
a judgy, not in a
And
shaming,
folks,
but
I know what her gazes are like. They got the message, I promise you,
touche.
no matter how "nice," quote, unquote, she was
But,
about it.
bump. That was, well played, Morris. Well played. Intrusive thoughts. Okie dokie, folks. There was a lot to cover there. But again, a big thanks to my handsome hubs for coming on to share about what he learned and took away from this conference weekend. I always value hearing his feedback, especially because he's not coming at this from a clinical mindset. Though, as you've heard, he's learned a lot along the way. And hey, fam, we can relate, right? I think it really is a credit to the time and attention that Patrick puts into our family, whether it's for better understanding me or Jack, his mom, our other loved ones with OCD, or even potentially himself. Like Patrick shared in his memory of the misophonia talk, the panel noted, yeah, wow, the power of a mother's love, right? And I would extend that even more, family. So, for today's intrusive thought segment, which, if you're newer to our full length family gatherings, this is the application segment of my show. And I want to say this yes, 100%. The power of a parent's love, whether it's a mother's love or a father's love, a guardian or a grandparent's love, the power of a sibling's love, of a partner's love, of a child's love, of a best friend's love. Because that's the thing about family, right? It's like whether you're gushing over each other or you're burnt out and you are like over some of this drama. Oh, the power of that love, family. It is no small thing. I talked with so many family members this past weekend, steadfast with renewed vigor. They're abuzz at the conference to find answers, access treatments, foster hope. You, family, you make such an incredible difference in the lives of folks battling their OCD and OCD related disorders. And while our loved ones are working so very hard, you too are working so very hard. So thank you. Thank you for everything you do to support and love your loved ones. Love isn't just a feeling. You know, in ICBT, we talk about doubt, not the feeling doubt. No, doubt the verb. Thank you for loving, actively loving the verb, your family. Thank you for everything you do to support your loved ones. And my charge to you all, whether you're the person with lived experience, the family member, a practitioner, a researcher, or maybe just a listener saying, this is really interesting and compelling and I want to learn more. That is helping to make a difference because you're learning about OCD and information is power. One less obsessive Christmas disorder shirt ordered, or a few more referrals for help given. One more client that can get to the right person for the right diagnosis, for the right treatment to help manage this crippling disorder. It all makes a difference. So, my charge to you, fam, is to allow yourself the space, the permission, the time to reward the investment and tireless fight you've given. You know, for kiddos, we know that reward reinforcement schedules, they help a lot. And we encourage families to build that into the structure, whether they're doing ERP or ICBT, because this treatment, it's hard. It's hard. But somewhere on the road to adulthood, we tend to stop that. We stop rewarding our efforts and our successes, and we just say, nope, that's the expectation. It's what you need to do. It's what you got to do. Suck it up, buttercup, and do it. And while I get it, trust me, the hyper responsible part of me definitely gets it. We are working so hard. You hear me? We're working so hard. So please do yourself this favor. And hey, if you can't do it for yourself yet, then do it for me. I want you to take some time to treat yourself this week, fam. Treat yourself because this work that you're doing, it's hard too. Oh, but it matters too. You matter too. So thanks for tuning in, fam. And hey, we have about a month of water cooler chats left before the launch of season 2, which I'm so excited about. And I just have to say, I have a growing list of amazing guests already lining up to join in on the fun. So join us next week, fam, for another water cooler chat where we're going to be diving, no pun intended, although maybe a little bit of a pun intended. I guess you'll just have to wait and see. Into BFRBs for the summertime. Yes, please. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for joining me and our OCD family community. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like and subscribe to the OCD Family Podcast wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Did you find this content helpful? Please consider leaving a review. The more people that know they're not alone, the better. For more information regarding today's podcast, please visit OCDFamilyPodcast.com and remember to join the email list while you're there. It will provide you with the most up-to-date information, resources, and the demo on the family chatter. Oh yeah, nothing says family like saying we're not to blame, but we're getting kicked off a plane. That's right, I went there. And you can too at OCDFamilyPodcast.com.